is one of the few people who's brave enough to tell the truth about this ongoing tragedy, about what our public health establishment has done to an entire generation of children. He's a professor at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine and the Bloomberg School of Public Health, and he joins us tonight. Doctor, we appreciate your coming on. These numbers are stunning. We first saw them because you tweeted them out. I assume you think they're real, but a child is 10 times more likely to die of suicide than of the coronavirus. What does that tell us?
Well, Tucker, first of all, in public health, research always lags behind reality and events. Right. That was true of smoking. When smoking started, people thought it was good for you, and then it was neutral. Finally, we realized just how many people die from it. We're going to see a lot of research come out on the restrictions, particularly against kids. And this is the first of many research studies, and it looks pretty grim. This is a nonprofit National Fair Health study, a 91% increase in kids, Tucker, who come to us as doctors because they tried to hurt themselves. At a time when all medical utilization has been cut in half, a spike, a 300% increase in some parts of the country where there are very strict restrictions against kids and school closures. A 300% increase in kids coming to us as doctors because they tried to hurt themselves. A 63% increase in overdoses. 23% of all emergency room visits at one point last year were from mental illness complaints. So this is the first of many studies that's going to tell us that many of these policies were basically an abuse by one group that has power over another group, and they exercise that power unfairly just because they could.
So to extend your tobacco analogy, when we finally figured out that smoking killed people, the people who ran the tobacco companies got hauled repeatedly before Congress and were asked a very simple question. When did you know that tobacco was a carcinogen? You've been selling this product despite the fact you knew it killed people. Are we ever going to have a similar reckoning with coronavirus lockdowns, where the people who were perfectly aware there wasn't a great risk of spreading the virus with kids in school still shut the schools down? Like, when do we get justice here?
Well, look, I believe in accountability. Unfortunately, I think that there's going to be a massive blame game going around. But the fundamental problem is we've not looked at the totality of data on the health of kids and health consequences. If you were to ask me, if you left your home, could you get bacterial meningitis? The answer will always be yes. But if people stay isolated, there will be more health consequences against that individual. And as a scientist, you've got to look at the totality of data on health outcomes. Those CDC guidelines that came out, Tucker, they were flawed. They were filled with dogma. They contradicted top CDC scientists who published in the Journal of the American Medical Association 3 weeks prior that schools don't significantly contribute to transmission. And if they were applied to the airline industry, every plane in the U.S. would be grounded. Why is it that adults get to pack into planes and they do it safely with masks, but kids are last in the reopening plan? That is an abuse of power, Tucker, and I hope there's ultimately a look back with a fair analysis of what's happening right now.
I hope so, too, because we don't want to make similarly tragic public health decisions in the future. And at this point, we will. I really appreciate your bravery. It's hard to believe that someone in your position is being this honest on TV, but we're grateful that you are. Doctor, thank you.
Thank you, Tucker.
So at the bottom of all of this, and by the way, everything we just said is public. You can find it on Google. Everyone in charge knows it. But the schools are still shut in a lot of places, and there's only one reason for that, and that's because the teachers' unions have inordinate political power. We want to talk now to Britt Hume. He's Fox's senior political analyst who has spent decades watching these unions exercise power, and ask, thank you, Britt, for joining us. The first and most obvious question is, are you surprised by the power that they have, the teachers' unions?
I must say, as powerful as I thought they were, I did not realize they were powerful enough to do what they've succeeded in doing. And we saw the most recent manifestation of that when the director of the CDC came out and said, that the science shows that it's safe to reopen schools without everyone being vaccinated. And in a matter of hours, really, the Biden administration had come out and said, well, she was speaking for herself. Which gave you a sense of how afraid the Biden administration, newly in power, is of what the teachers' unions say and want. It is really quite striking, and I would think Tucker, that in elections ahead, that this public policy decision to close down the economy for much of the year and close down schools will come back to haunt the party in power. But who knows? The teachers' unions are quite a force.
But so are parents, and particularly moms. And if you prevent young school-aged children from attending school, and we see all the attendant health consequences, the tragedies that result from that, I don't think anything infuriates people more than that. I don't think anything mobilizes them more quickly. It doesn't matter who you voted for. I mean, they're taking a big risk, aren't they?
No, I think they are, and I think it'll come back, as I suggest, to haunt them. But let's make one thing clear. The effect of the media coverage in particular, and of a lot of the pronouncements of public health officials as well, on the nation's attitude on this was very powerful. And the sense of fear that it engendered in the American body politic has been the strongest thing we've seen, really, in terms of people's unwillingness to face the data as it became clearer and clearer. Scientists have said almost from the beginning that this is a disease that way disproportionately affects the elderly and those with certain attendant comorbidities, and that everyone else was, if not completely safe from the disease, against largely so. To the point where we did something very peculiar, Tucker. Not only did we quarantine the sick, we quarantined the healthy. And that's a bizarre decision that was made. But it tells you the fact that it's enjoyed such wide acceptance for so long, how frightened people have been made by this, and many people are still to this day afraid. It was striking to me that Texas today, the governor there, has tossed out the mask mandate and opened up everything. And of course, an immediate reaction from other quarters, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, was that this was insane, that this was reckless. My own view of this is that what was reckless was keeping the schools and much of the economy of California closed for this long. But that gives you a sense of how strong the fear is and has been throughout much of this year.
It'd be interesting, maybe we'll do it tomorrow night, to put a graph on the screen of the number of people who are moving from Texas to California versus the number of people who are moving from California to Texas. Maybe they know.
Well, we all know what the trend has been up to now, and it has been away from California, which has been losing residents for sure.
Amazing. Britt Hume, thanks so much for that.
You bet.
Well, our southern border, our border with Mexico, is collapsing. Hate to say that, but it's true. We saw the latest sign of it today. An SUV carrying 25 apparent illegal immigrants crashed in Southern California.